Excellent!
Here I have a GTX 980 Ti, and here I have another GTX 980 Ti. This one is the reference version from NVIDIA, and this one from EVGA is custom. In today's video, I'll be showing you three things. First off, what is the difference between custom and reference? Second, I'll list some pros and cons for each design. And third, depending on the type of computer that you're building, what is the best choice between custom and reference? See, like I said, three things. I also want to point out that whereas I'm using these 980 Ti's as an example for this video really applies to all GPUs that have a reference design as well as custom versions. So whenever a GPU manufacturer like NVIDIA or AMD makes a new GPU, they almost always design a reference completed graphics card as well, like this one. Originally, this was to provide an easier means for AIB or AIC partners, that's add-in board or add-in card for those who don't have all the acronyms in the world memorized, to actually get the graphics cards onto store shelves with a minimal amount of R&D investment. In recent years though, these reference designs have scaled up in performance and looks to become more like statement pieces from AMD or NVIDIA. So for example, NVIDIA has been so pleased with the design of this reference cooler that they originally launched with the OG Titan in February 2013 that they've used essentially the same design for all of their high-end single GPU graphics cards ever since. Sometimes they may make parts of it more or less black depending on how badass the GPU inside is, of course. AMD, for their part, didn't hit with as much reference cooler design success when their Hawaii GPU-based cards launched, but they have made some extremely compelling reference designs with built-in water cooling, such as the very successful dual Hawaii R9 295X2, as well as the upcoming Fury X card. But I already mentioned add-in board partners, and if you haven't noticed this before, you can buy graphics cards from an AIB partner like EVGA, MSI, Gigabyte, Asus, or XFX, but you'll have a hard time actually buying a graphics card just from AMD, or just from NVIDIA for that matter. AMD and NVIDIA design and manufacture the GPUs at the heart of the card. They create a reference design that they also might manufacture, or allow add-in board partners to manufacture, and the AIB partners handle things like packaging, distribution, customer support, and returns. So if the reference designs were perfect, we'd never need any custom designs, right? Well, that may be true, but as Morgan Freeman once said in the classic film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Allah loves wondrous variety. AIB partners with the means have taken to designing their own versions of cards in order to improve cooling performance, overclocking, or simply to help their cards stand out in a marketplace flooded with look-alike reference cards. Adding your own special sticker to the reference design doesn't always do the trick. So custom cards come in a few varieties. The AIB partner can choose to use NVIDIA's design for the PCB, the printed circuit board that the GPU is soldered to. Think of it like the PCB is to the GPU as a motherboard is to a CPU. In this case, the layout of all the components on the PCB will be the same. The GPU location, the power delivery, the traces, but the cooler that sits on top can be radically different. That's the case with this GPU from EVGA, which uses EVGA's specially made cooler on top and the NVIDIA reference PCB design on the bottom. They've put a backplate so you can't really see it. EVGA's recent custom cooler designs are called ACX, or Active Cooling Extreme, and other manufacturers have also come up with fancy names for theirs as well. Gigabyte has the WindForce, Asus has DirectCU, MSI has Twin Frozer, for example, but they're all custom coolers if you want to simplify things, and their performance may vary a lot depending on lots of factors, and deciding which custom cooler is the best is not really the point of this video, so we'll leave it at that. One thing to point out though is that almost all the popular designs for custom coolers right now are open, with multiple fans like the ACX cooler here, 2 and sometimes 3, whereas the reference designs for both NVIDIA and AMD are closed housings with a single blower style fan that's meant to push air out the back of the case. So when I talk in a moment about choosing which one you might want for your system, I'll be comparing the characteristics of open multi-fan cooler designs versus closed blower fan cooler designs, even though it's not out of the question for a reference cooler to be open or for a custom cooler to be closed. Now, custom open multi-fan coolers like EVGA's here will also have cooling elements positioned on top of the heat generating parts of the card like the GPU, memory, memory and voltage regulators, and very often, like the ACX cooler, will use heat pipes or other efficient heat conducting parts to pull heat away from the GPU, memory, etc., and out into these arrays of metal fins, which are usually made of aluminum. The fans on top of the fins push air over them to evacuate the heat from the area, but since the design is open, the air will not be pushed out the back of the case. Well, some of it will, but most of it won't, and will instead go out in all directions to commingle with the rest of the air in your system. The second part of a custom design can be the PCB itself. This is usually reserved for the most specialist high-end cards. AIB partners with engineering teams at their disposal can redesign the board itself, retracing the traces, moving components around to suit their needs, and changing the power delivery elements to maximize overclocking potential, or even to add video memory, LED lights, or other distinguishing features. So are custom designed PCBs better than reference designs? Well, I can't really say yes or no across the board, but I think that a manufacturer like EVGA or Asus wouldn't go to all the trouble and investment of designing their own custom PCB unless they saw some tangible benefit from doing so. Speaking of tangible benefits, it's time to talk pros and cons for reference versus custom graphics card designs, and we'll start with the coolers. Remember, I'm not just comparing reference cooler versus custom with the cooler here, but also closed blower design versus open multi-fan design, since that has been the market trend for quite some time. On the plus side, a reference closed blower style cooler will keep the other components in your system cooler by pushing the hot air out the back of the case, often to the tune of 5 to 10 degrees Celsius for a component like the CPU, for example, but this will obviously vary a lot depending on your hardware. On the minus side, cards that use these designs usually run at significantly higher temperatures, in my experience sometimes 10 to 20 degrees hotter than a comparable open cooler. NVIDIA will tell you that their GPUs are designed to run at 80 degrees Celsius or more, but keeping things cooler can mean better performance, longer lifespan, and higher GPU boost frequencies. The flip side for custom open design coolers is that the GPU can run much cooler, but at the expense of warming up the rest of the parts in your system. In either case, as parts get warm, fans will ramp up their speed to help dissipate the heat, so it's hard to say that one solution or the other will provide a better experience if you're looking for a silent gaming system. Either the GPU fan might get loud, or your case or your CPU fans might get loud. For the PCB itself, the benefit of a reference design is usually compatibility. Reference PCBs will get the job done, and they have a wider range of compatible aftermarket coolers. So if you want to mod your card in the future with something like an NZXT Kraken G10 or Corsair Hydro HD10 for water cooling, or a full custom water cooling loop with a block for your GPU, you'll have a lot more options with a reference PCB design. Custom PCB designs often have the benefit of added power delivery and can generally outperform reference design boards, all else being equal, of course. These cards are usually designed for overclocking, and since they are often high-end models, it's very common for the GPUs in custom design boards to be binned or tested for performance, with the best performing GPUs selected for custom designed graphics cards. If you don't want just a 980 Ti, you want a 980 Ti that can overclock like mad and beat out your friend's 980 Ti, a full custom design is the way to go. Even though you'll find less compatibility with aftermarket cooling solutions, these highest end models usually do get support from companies like EK with specially designed water blocks, since they're usually the best performing cards on the market. The other trade-off, if it wasn't already obvious, is cost, as top-end custom cards can command a hefty premium even over their reference design counterparts that use the same exact GPU. So the last thing to talk about is what is the best choice for you? And my question would be, what kind of system are you building? In my opinion, there are situations where the reference blower style design works really well. If you're installing multiple graphics cards with SLI or Crossfire, but you have limited airflow, for example, it's much better to have the hot air escape out of the case rather than warming up everything else inside, especially if you have multiple cards. And a smaller form factor system as well, when space and airflow are very limited, a blower style card will do a great job, particularly if the case positions the card right next to a side intake, so it can have its own little airflow system without affecting the rest of the components. Now, there's no denying the efficacy or popularity of custom designs, and I generally recommend them over reference designs if you have the proper airflow. High airflow cases are all over the place these days, so if your case has larger front intake fans, unobstructed paths for air to get back to the GPU area, good exhaust, then you'll be able to mitigate the extra heat that the graphics card can add to the system. The trade-off can be noise though, so invest in some higher quality case fans and CPU cooling to help keep things quiet. I want to know what you guys are using at home though. How many of you have an NVIDIA reference design GPU from the past few years that looks exactly like this one, except for the letters on the end? And how many of you have a 2 or 3 fan GPU cooler running from any of the other corners of the market where those exist? Let me know in the comments and I will read them and smile. Speaking of smiling though, you can smile yourself as you browse the over 3,000 on-demand video courses available on lynda.com, the website that is dedicated to making you smarter. Lynda.com is an online learning platform made to help you strengthen your business, technology, and creative skills, and what could possibly be better than the 10-day free trial that you can get via this sponsorship promotion? Simply go to lynda.com/Paul and the rest is really quite simple. So simple that even Kyle can do it. He's been brushing up on the basics by running through the K-12 education courses, which are made for teachers and students alike. But I think he's really mostly fascinated with the pretty colors and sounds that the videos make. Whatever your learning level is at though, Lynda has video courses available to help amplify your knowledge in your chosen field, so click the sponsor link in this video's description for more information or go directly to lynda.com/Paul. That's all for this video though, folks. Don't forget to hit that like button on your way out if you enjoyed it. Also, in your spare time, feel free to peruse my shop at store.paulshardware.net for shirts, mugs, and glasses. Share this video to promote GPU vigilance, and of course, you can use my Amazon link before you buy stuff at Amazon, even if the stuff you buy is not related to GPUs at all. It really doesn't matter. I'm glad you stopped by today though, and as always, thanks for watching.